All right. So welcome back, everybody. This is our second session of the National Research Platform's Fall Training series. If you haven't attended the first one, we were just giving you a brief introduction on the National Research Platform and its missions, resources, capabilities, and how to gain access. And in this session, we'll be going over the NRP website and the user portal and navigating how to use the portal, how to add users, and how to access different things in the portal and how to do user management if you're a namespace admin. So namespace admin in Kubernetes, a namespace admin is the admin of their group or scope that they're running in Kubernetes. So that mainly that's the part of an instructor, a lab supervisor, a principal investigator on a research, or a campus IT person, or a main contact person of any institute or entity that is on NRP. So everybody's more than welcome to attend the session. This is slightly more relevant for namespace admins because it shows them specific admin related tasks in the portal. Of course, the next session will be next Tuesday, same timing, back to back, starting 10 a.m. Pacific time. That is 1 p.m. Eastern time, and the next one is directly after it, so 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. We'll be going over how to use Jupyter Hub Encoder as a user of both the NRP instances and basic Docker and Kubernetes. So today was more of an overview. By the end of next week's sessions, hopefully you will be very comfortable with using NRP at the three main entry points that we talked about in the previous session. The week after that, it'll be more intermediate steps. At that point, if you end here, you should be an intermediate or even advanced user who's very comfortable with using all the cluster services. If you're an instructor for a class or if you're looking into hosting your own instance of Jupyter Hub Encoder, that's what the session on September 23rd will be about. And September 30th, those will be the more advanced use cases, like using GitLab's DevOps tools and building your own custom Docker images and running virtualization in Windows and different edge use cases with different hardware, like FPGAs, for example. So, like we said in the previous session, to be able to access the main three access points, whether it's Jupyter Hub Coder or Kubernetes, you need to be part of a namespace on the cluster, on the portal. So the cluster's website is nrp.ai, and it's the same web page for the portal, and that's what we're going to be showing you. But to gain access, to give you a little bit of an agenda on how today's going to go, we're going to show you the website, logging in, gaining access, how namespaces are organized, so the hierarchy, the hierarchical resource model, how to manage your namespaces and permissions in it, how that leads to being able to access the cluster, and generally best practices. So NRP's website is nrp.ai. That's it. I'm just going to show you here. So this is NRP's website. Hope everyone can see my browser window here. And you can see, so then generally this is NRP's website. This has all the information about the NRP, including blog section, for example, for recent news and so on, and all the relevant information for whoever wants to know about NRP, but also has this relevant information for users. So participating, see the new user guide. This takes you to our documentation, to the relevant page on what is Nautilus, how to use it, and so on and so forth. Educational classroom use also has more details on how to use NRP in your classroom and also links to the relevant doc pages to show you all the information on getting started. New contributor guide on how to add hardware and network requirements also on how to add hardware what requirements are needed. The community is so the people behind NRP and our partners and institutes behind NRP. Infographics. Now, this part is highly relevant to users, is all the visualizations and infographics about how to use NRP. And you can see, so cluster infographics, these are the visualizations for all resources about NRP. Observable notebooks, those are notebooks that literally show graphs and visualizations on how to use the cluster. And sorry, visualizations on hardware resources and usage in the cluster. And cluster dashboard. This is the dashboard we showed you in the previous talk where you can see the real-time usage and resources of the cluster as well. And Grafana dashboards, these pull from real-time metrics from Prometheus and the cluster, and you have various dashboards to look at. You can see, for example, CPU usage, CPUs by namespace, and I can just basically specify my own namespace and see how much CPU it's using, or GPU and CPU utilization, and so on. Various dashboards for usage. And you can actually go down to the pod level and monitor your pod and its containers on Grafana to see, for example, how much resources you're using and so on. Perf Sonar for network performance as well. You can look at every single cluster on every single node. So node is the physical server on the cluster and monitor its network performance with Perf Sonar and Mad Dash. And news is where we post blogs and blog posts and news and presentations from the cluster. But as always, the main resource for real time, no matter how small or big cluster updates, you have to be on Matrix. You have to be on the Matrix NRP news channel. Ideally, every single user would be on the Matrix channel. But for information on how to use, you can see community and contact. Just this mainly shows you how to join our Matrix chat where the NRP newsroom that I'm talking about exists. And docs is our documentation, every single piece on how to get started, and tutorials and reproducible examples that you can basically use and get started with, and commands to run and what you should see. It's all in there. And now to the good part, user. Now, the links under here, these are what we mainly call the user portal. So these are the links on the website that are more relevant to users who are logged in. So you can see here I'm logged in. But let's say I log out. This is what happens when you visit the web page as a visitor, basically. And you see user info. I'm not logged in to see any info. Namespaces. I'm not logged in to see my own personal namespaces. I can still see accessible public resources like resources. This is every single server, so every single node or host server and its resources that we talked. But to be able to see my namespaces, I have to log in to see this. And we're gonna go through it together. So let's log in together. This is me logging in, and every single person can log in. We use this platform called Authentic. You can see its name here for authentication. So Authentic is what handles authentication with CI logon. So here, because it's cached, I logged in immediately, but let me show you using private browsing. So this is NRP. When I join and log in, you can see here, this is Authentic. It's what handles authentication for every single service on the cluster. And it takes me to CI logon. So CI logon is what handles federation. Now, the main thing to note here is that coming from a campus or from an educational or academic institute, you should use your own institute's identity provider. So for example, I work at UCSD, so I use UCSD and login. And this takes me to UCSD's login, and I can just log in and multi-factor authentication. I approve it, and you can see it takes me in. And now I'm in, it'll redirect me. I'll be in the portal. Now, every single user can go through this step. So you could be an NRP user, you could be not an NRP user, you can even create an email right now and do this step. So this step, just the pure act of logging in, you don't gain access to the cluster at that point. What you made is you just created your account in the records in Authentic. And you'll see here you're logged in as yourself, and the image is pulled from Gravatar. So if you have a Gravatar profile with a profile picture, it gets pulled here. I can see namespaces. If I'm a brand new user and I click namespaces, I won't see anything here because I'm not part of any namespace yet, which means I can't really use cluster resources yet. So for whoever's on this call right now and is joining whether live or watching the recording, if you visit this web page here and you wait for it to load and you don't see any namespaces or groups here, that means you don't have access to the cluster services. So if you're a student, please ask your PI and or your professor, whoever is leading your research or class, to join NRP themselves and to add you to a namespace. And when they join NRP themselves, they can be made the namespace admins. They can be the admins of their own namespace, and they have the ability in the portal to add you to their namespace and to even promote you to the namespace admins if they choose. So docs.nrp.ai, it's the main link for documentation. It takes me to nrp.ai/documentation. You can see on any page in the website, I can just hit docs, and this is the docs page. So once I hit docs, get access explains every single thing you should do to be able to access the cluster. So like we said, the steps are still the same. So point your browser to the website, which is what we did. So it's nrp.ai. We logged in, we selected our identity provider. After we're logged in, if you're a student, please contact your supervisor and have them add you to their namespace if they have one, or have them join NRP and become admin and add you to their namespace. But if you're a faculty member or researcher or postdoc or PI, you can create a namespace if you're an admin already to add users to, or you can ping us in Matrix to make you an admin. If you hit the Matrix link, it shows you step by step on how to join Matrix. Once you're namespace admin, we'll create a namespace for you, which is basically the scope of where you can work, where you can do your work. So let me show you, for example, so you can see it. So MFSADA, this is my own, for example, namespace. And I can, if I scroll down, you can see editing and the tree for my namespace. So it's under NRP UCSD, NRP-dev, and my namespace. Your namespace also will follow a hierarchical model. So it'll be NRP, which is the main root, the institute you're part of, any subgroups, then the name of your group or your lab or your main namespace name. And of course, we'll create this for you the first time and you'll gain access over it. So for me, this is, for example, MFSADA. Then I have to fill out these fields. So PI, who's the PI, what grant, is there, like, is it not applicable? Description. And here, please be very descriptive with the description, because if I say, for example, personal space for running Kubernetes, that applies to most namespaces on the cluster, because everybody's running Kubernetes. So it's better for everybody if you can be descriptive in what you're running in your namespace, and be accurate with what institute you're part of. So we make sure the hierarchical model is correct, and if you need any campus specific support, we can get you to the right place, and the software used and publications. Please, we kindly ask you that you fill these out just so we keep track of what software is being used on NRP and how we can support it better, and how much publications are actually using NRP in general. And now this is the user management part. And I hope everyone at this part can, whoever is not part of a namespace is in a namespace now and can follow this part. So the users part, this is where you're able to handle the user operations. So this is me right here. This is my account. You can see I'm listed as an admin. So since I'm an admin is a cluster-wide role, but if I'm an admin in this namespace, that means I have admin control in this namespace. But if I'm in another namespace, I'm also going to be listed as admin because it's a cluster-wide access. But if I'm not in a namespace, then I can't access it. If I'm not in a namespace, I won't see it in this tree. So for users, you won't see all of these. What you will see is the namespaces you are part of. So you might see something like only NRP, then arrow UCSD, then arrow NRP dev, then arrow, for example, MFSADA for me. And if you're an admin of this, you'll be able to modify at this level if you click on it, but not at this level. So this is my namespace. Now to add users, I can, here I'm just temporarily just using my personal Gmail just to show you an example without tampering around with the namespaces. So if I type in my email, Oh, my bad. Let me see. I think I used actually, let me just use Dima's email. If you don't mind, I'm just gonna add it to my namespace. So if I type in Dima's email and wait,
Yeah, it's sometimes slow.
all right, let's just give it some time. If I type in Dima's email and wait, it'll drop down. It'll show me a drop down menu with the email. And uh,
Oh, that's demo effect.
okay, let me try again. Hopefully I didn't misspell something. So while it loads, uh, when you want to add users, you type in their email and let me refresh actually.
It can be anything, name, email, ID.
Yeah, and if it shows in it if they've logged in before, it shows in the dropdown. If it doesn't show in the dropdown, that means they haven't logged in before. So they need to log in at least once for them to show as users that you can add. So the correct order is that they join the portal. So they just go on nrp.ai and log in at least once, and then at that point they can show up in the dropdown and you can add them to your namespace. So let's try this again. Let's give it some time. And so basically the gist is that you need your users to log in at least once for you to be able to add them. Otherwise, they're not going to show in the dropdown. And of course, we can do this 1,000 times, and the one time we're demoing it, it will not work instantly.
Well, can be the uh, capacity effect if everybody is following, then we have too many requests now.
Yeah, we could also be bottling the API if we're all adding at the same time. But essentially, this will query the dropdown. You also, while it loads, I'm just going to show you. So open bulk user add form. So you can also type in emails. So I can actually do, and let me say I add Daniel, for example, and I bulk add them. Now, since they're both on NRP, they both have logged in before. This should add them to my namespace. But you can't add users in this list also if they haven't logged in. So that is one thing you might face in adding users. Now we'll just wait on it. I think it might be pressure on the API. Here we go. So you can see I added Dima and I added Daniel to my namespace. Actually, let me try this again. Just give it some time. So you can see, here we go. So this is my personal email, for example. I can add this and it'll add to my namespace. Now inside of my namespace, I can make Dima admin. I can make Daniel admin. And see user added successfully. It'll show my other email as well. And let's just give it some time to query. You can see here it added my user. Now I can also make myself admin or not admin. Let me just show you my personal one. So I promoted this. I'm promoting this account to admin. And you can see, so here, but they're identity provider. So I'm logging in using the UCSD, which is University of California, San Diego. Similar thing for Dima and Daniel. For my personal one, it says Google, for example. Now I promoted my personal account. Let's just wait for it to refresh. Dima and Daniel said since they're edge cases, let's look at this. Let's say this is a user I'm adding to my namespace, and I made them admin. That's how I promoted them. Now they have within the namespace, they have the same privileges I have. I can also make them not admin, and that will turn them into a normal user again.
And
And
admin is global to all namespaces. It's not per namespace. So you're just granting this person an admin status and it will be everywhere.
yeah, and Dima, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you grant them admin and let's say so this is my namespace here, and I made someone admin here. They can go in here and create namespaces under it and manage users under it.
Yes.
So this is, for example, my namespace, and I can scroll a little bit down and create subgroups. So under MFSADA, let me say training test to delete later, for example. Or if I have the Kubernetes namespace checkbox selected and I create it, it'll show as blue. And blue as a convention here, blue is a Kubernetes namespace. That means when I create a group that is also a namespace, it shows in blue. That means whoever I add to it has Kubernetes access. So they can use the Kubernetes access points. They can use kube control and kubectl and the CLI tools, and they can run stuff in that namespace. And if I don't check it while I create it, it'll show as red. Sorry. Let me do the tree again. So let's wait for it to load. So the red ones here, these are groups. And essentially what groups are, they're an object in the portal. They're in the page here, as you see. And groups, like namespaces, they have users. So nrp-dev, I can add users here, just like how I add users to namespaces. And users and admins, same roles, same everything. The only difference here between red and blue is that this is a Kubernetes namespace. I can use Kubernetes, I can launch pods in this, I can launch volumes in this. And it's a group in the cluster. So it's a group of users, it's a group that has subgroups under it, it's part of the hierarchy. The red one is only a group, so it doesn't have anything tied to it in Kubernetes. So I create groups just for hierarchical purposes where I want to group users. And like we mentioned in the previous talk, if you want to access Jupyter Hub and Coder, you need to be part of a group, at least one group. So that means so this is our public Jupyter Hub, for example. To be able to access it, you need to be part of a group. But let's say I'm a PI, I have some users who are never going to use Kubernetes. I just want them to be able to access Jupyter, NRP's Jupyter. I can just add them to a group. So and under MFSADA, for example, I can just create a group and call it MFSADA Jupyter Hub users, for example. And this is, if I uncheck this, it's only a group. I can just add users to it. They can access other cluster services, but they can't really access Kubernetes. And the LiteLLM checkbox, if you check LiteLLM, that also creates a LiteLLM group. So team. So LiteLLM uses the term teams. If you create a LiteLLM group, then you're creating a team for your LiteLLM usage, which is LiteLLM or get to LLM usage down the road, but in the AI and ML LLM tool session. But LiteLLM teams, which you see in yellow, these are when you create them and check it, that means you have your assigned team. So you have a scope where you have your users can access LiteLLM API keys and they can access NRP's managed LLMs. Because we host multiple LLMs on the cluster for all cluster users. And to be able to actually access them, you need to be part of an LLM team. And that's what the yellow here is. And you can see for some instances, you might see green. Let me find. So for example, any green ones you see, green is both a Kubernetes namespace and a LiteLLM team. So when I check both boxes and I go in to create a group, it'll create in LiteLLM and give me LLM access, and we'll show you how to do that in the future talks. And then it'll also create a Kubernetes namespace. So you can see mine created here. So training, test to delete later, created as a namespace. And you can see it inherits me as a user, but it doesn't inherit everybody from the previous group. So as the admin that created it, I can still scope my users in different groups and different namespaces. So I can still add, for example, my personal one. I can either add it through the bulk feature or through the drop-down box. You can see here, if I add it, since I demoted myself, you'll see I'm added as user for my personal account. But like Dima mentioned, if I promote it to an admin and I add it to another namespace, it'll join the user I added as an admin to the other namespace. So you can see I made the Gmail account admin here, and I go back. Let me make sure it went through. Okay, user promoted successfully. This is the parent. Of course, in Kubernetes, there's no parent namespaces and child namespaces. That exists in the portal and user management. So for who is admin that can add users and who is users and so on and so forth. But in Kubernetes itself, there's no parent and sub namespace or child namespace. You can see since I promoted the Gmail account there, it promotes cluster-wide. So it's admin here. And since I promoted the user, I have the power to demote them. But let's say I promoted two users, one of them can't demote the other. Or A promoted B, promoted C, C can't demote B or A. And B can demote C but not A, and so on. And the other thing to mention here is group tenants. If you're basically what institute you're coming from, if you own hardware that you're contributing to NRP and you want to link your namespace to what group you're coming from in cases where certain groups add hardware and they want to gain priority access to NRP. Like we mentioned, NRP is sort of a potluck model where you can bring your own resources. And if certain groups join hardware, but they want to gain sort of, let me say, priority access to it, that is always an available option. And of course, here there's uh, one main thing to add here is that when you create a namespace or a group on the portal, that process sort of implies responsibility. So when you add a user to the namespace, you have to make sure you know the user and you're adding a user that is actually part of your group and they're in the appropriate group. So let's say you have three different projects with three different students. You can create three different namespaces for them. There's no one is limiting namespace numbers or group numbers as long as they're scoped right. So you don't have to group all of your users in the same group if they're doing different things. You can always subdivide. And you also have the responsibility of onboarding and offboarding users. So when you add a user to the cluster, in most cases, users are students. So you're implying the responsibility that once the student graduates or isn't working on NRP, that you'll essentially offboard them because when you add users and they have access to their credentials, so their campus single sign-on, for example, they're still part of the namespace. They still have access to Kubernetes in your own scope namespace unless you remove them. And with that as well, we always recommend that users, and we actually ask, so users join NRP with their academic credentials. Let me show you. So I logged in with UCSD as my identity provider, but let's say private browsing, I'm logging in for the first time, and authentic takes me to site logon, and oh, sorry, still logged in. Okay, let me show you a different. There we go. Let me try to log in. I just want to show you the CI logon window. So for most institutes, for most cases, you'll find your university here and your institute here, wherever your account credentials are from. You'll find them here, but I know that that's not 100% of the cases. There are schools that don't have CI logon credentials, and that's why your fallback is using either Orchid or Google or Microsoft or GitHub. That of course does not mean use Gmail, but if you're my so if I use Google, it'll take me to my Gmail login, and I can still use my CIA, my UCSD email. So that's your fallback, because it's highly discouraged to use personal Gmails or personal accounts or GitHub unless it's a fallback option that is a necessity. But ideally, every user will use their campus single sign-on. That's not an option, then you have the fallback here. And if anyone is watching this or attending this and you're from outside the United States and you're affiliated with an institute outside the United States, then you would need to be collaborating on research with an institute inside the United States to be able to access a namespace. So you'll need to have US collaborators in academia. And also for whoever is watching or attending from industry, you will also need collaborators from academia in the United States to be able to access a namespace and use NRP services. And of course, this goes without saying, but all of your use should be for academic purposes and nothing commercial or can be commercialized. And let's go back to the namespaces. The other thing here is uh, as of the time of doing this session and talking now, if you want to delete a namespace, please ping us and we'll do it for you. And if you want to move, so let's say you created something wrong in the hierarchy and now it's or you're reorganizing, so the tree looks better, it looks more accurate, represents the structure of your lab or your work more. Please also ping us and we can move the hierarchy around and organize it however you see fit. One thing to point out is that groups we can rename, yes, as entities, but Kubernetes namespace, there's no Kubernetes namespace renaming in in uh, in Kubernetes. So if you create a namespace and there's a typo or anything, we can't really rename it. If it's empty, we can delete it and create a new one. But if it has resources, we can't delete it. So please be careful when you're naming your namespace so there's no typos, something that looks off. And please refrain from generic names, like for example, Kubernetes AI, because that's basically half of the cluster going to Kubernetes AI. So if you can name your namespace either a descriptive name or uh, something that reflects the lab or the institute or something. We don't have a formal naming convention, so you don't have to call it, for example, UCSD dash something, because in the tree it is under UCSD, for example. But there is Kubernetes constraints, so underscores, for example, cannot be in namespace names. You can use dashes, for example. All of it is lowercase. So if I go in, try to create something that is uppercase, it won't like that. And it'll ask me to use lowercase, for example. And the namespaces can only create lowercase, alphanumeric, and dash. And like we said, please use CI logon with your academic credentials. The hierarchical resource model is organization, lab, project, or any subgroups that might exist. And when asking to become, if you're a PI and you're asking to become a namespace admin, if you can also provide us with the name of your lab or how you would like the hierarchy to be correct, that would be super helpful for us. And like we said, namespaces are your basically your Kubernetes projects. And groups that are not namespaces are your projects that aren't Kubernetes. So either you're just grouping users or giving them access to Jupyter Hub, or you're creating the entity that will have multiple namespaces under it, but itself it's just the like upper name, basically nothing under it, nothing represented in Kubernetes. Roles and namespaces as a PI, you join in as admin, and you can you have more let me call it elevated access in your own namespace where you can do advanced stuff. Users have a smaller scope of what they can do and what they can't do. So a lot of PIs will uh, promote one or multiple of their more advanced users to be able to implement the more advanced stuff without the PIs being hands-on and implementing advanced stuff. One example would be deploying Jupyter Hub, because that requires some permissions that are admin scoped, but not user scoped. And like we mentioned, once you're in a namespace and you can visit this page and see that you're part of a blue or a red group. Blue is namespace as well. Then you can access Jupyter Hub Encoder and Kubernetes if it's blue. And lastly, I just want to focus a little bit on best practices. So, and these are very highly important for all cluster users. And first thing is keep docs.nrp.ai bookmarked and keep it ready. This is our documentation. When we add a new service, when we add new software, new hardware, it's always documented in documentation with reproducible examples and with other helpful links, dashboards, visualizations. So please always refer to our documentation. Once you get accustomed to using it, you'll see that we basically provide you with all the examples and all the info you need, including cluster policies, so you don't fall into any involuntary cluster violation of policies and rules. The other thing is join Matrix, because Matrix is where we provide almost real-time support. So whenever we're on Matrix, we are going to answer your questions. So join Matrix. We're always more than happy to answer your questions. And please always use CI logon with your campus single sign-on and your campus identity provider. So CI logon the drop-down menu, if your campus is on there, please use your campus. If it's not on there, then please use Google or Microsoft or Orchid, GitHub, but please use them with your institutional email, not any Gmail account or Outlook account or so on. And please keep your namespaces organized in their hierarchy, like we mentioned. So you can create multiple projects and multiple groups and namespaces. You don't have to group different projects in one namespace. And please don't use any generic or vague names, like, for example, AI lab or biology lab or Kubernetes space or Kubernetes project. And please fill out the fields for your namespace. So the fields here. Some of those fields are required for Kubernetes to work if you're creating a Kubernetes namespace. So if you created it and they're empty here and you try to launch a pod, it'll basically show you a message that says please fill out these fields to be able to use the namespace. And another thing is please use PVCs and persistent volume claims for persistent storage. And please clean them up as you basically get done with using them. So if you have, let's say, a multiple 100 GB or multiple terabyte data set and you're done with the research related to it, please clean it up, because that frees up storage for more cluster users. And NRP is not suited for archival storage. We assume that whatever storage you're using is temporary. It's not for keeping the data, but more for hosting the data to be able to run your workflows. And lastly, I just want to focus on a few things. First of all, please make sure you onboard and offboard users. Uh, if you're a namespace admin, please make sure your users are well aware of the cluster's policies before they join, before they're able to provision resources. And please make sure they're offboarded when they graduate or when they leave or when they're not affiliated and so on. because technically still having access is a violation of policy. And please clean up any unused jobs, deployments, any pods that are holding up resources. Please make sure you clean up after them and they're not left running either for long periods or permanently or indefinitely using resources, because whatever resource you're requesting, there will be someone else waiting in line to get that resource. So please clean up after pods and resources. And the more important part is please monitor your pods and workflows, because if you create a pod and it crashes for some reason and it's in error state, it'll remain in error state if you don't clean up the pod, and that error state will still be hogging the resources under the hood. So there will be some idle resources the user won't get a hold of, which gets me to the other point is please, please, please don't idle any resources that you request, and backup, backup, backup. Any pod at any single time is s- it's subject for any number of reasons to get terminated. Because if like you saw, we operated more than 80 sites now, and there's no guarantee that we have 100% uptime because that's really not realistic. So your pod, your container is subject to crash at any single point in time for any number of factors. So you should be prepared that whatever workflows you're running, they're backed up, they have checkpoints, they resume from checkpoints. You don't have a container that is designed, for example, to run for three constant days or for a week or for a whole day even. And if it doesn't, it wastes all that work. So please make sure your workflows are implemented in a way where they checkpoint and backup. And please also don't keep any code, any valuable source code for any experiments you're running. Don't keep it solely on the cluster. Make sure you have local backups. Make sure you have repository backups. And lastly, if you're not sure, please ask us. At this point of running the cluster, we've seen many, many scenarios, many, many use cases. We can always help you. If you're not sure about anything, please feel free to ask us. There's always no shame in asking. There's no stupid questions. It's always better to ask if you're not sure than doing something incorrectly. And the main best practice here that we didn't include in the slides because we don't want to officially say it, but we will sort of casually said, please don't use LLMs to generate YAML, because more often than not, they will give you YAML that won't work on NRP, and in a lot of cases will cause issues and will not fix the underlying issues. It will LLMs generally will try to fix symptoms, not issues, and then you'll run into various issues. And we've seen multiple cases where users, for example, you ask an LLM to generate your YAML and it's using a storage class for your PVC that does not even exist on NRP. So please don't use LLMs. You have actual human support here to help you out throughout the way. So please, we're here to help you. Make sure you make use of us as a resource. And thank you all very much. I'll just stop here and stop sharing. I'll stop recording here and start taking questions if anybody has any questions, anybody requires any help. Let me just stop recording.